What you're about to hear happened just a few weeks ago. Inside a prison in Wisconsin, a man who did terrible things back in 2018 is now saying something that's got everyone talking, and not in a good way. Families are angry. The internet is divided. Old wounds that America thought were healing, they're being ripped open again. This isn't the Chris Watts story you've heard before. This is something different, something calculated. Something that prison workers say is actually dangerous. Many people ask why the Chris Watts story remains in the news, why people want the case to be reopened. And I always tell them his actions deeply hurt his family and touched the hearts of parents and families everywhere, leaving so much sadness that we all feel. As humans, we want to understand the pain and loss caused by this tragedy. To keep exploring this case with care and find answers about Chris Watts' life and whoever is involved in this, please subscribe to this channel, even though it's hard getting this information. But your support helps me dig and share more details respectfully. In early 2025, just a couple months ago, a prison counselor at Dodge Correctional Institution in Wisconsin notices something weird. Really weird. Chris Watts, inmate number 5789. This guy barely said a word for 6 years. 6 whole years of silence. And then suddenly, he can't stop talking. Why? Well, according to Chris, he's found God. He says he's had what he calls a spiritual awakening. Now let me paint you a picture of where Chris Watts lives. This isn't some minimum security camp. This is maximum security. He's in protective custody. That means he's locked down 23 hours a day. 1 hour. That's all he gets outside his cell. His cell is small. 8 by 10 feet, a bed, a toilet, a sink. That's it. Every day is the same. Wake up, eat breakfast through a slot in the door. Stay in his cell. Maybe get that 1 hour outside. Back to his cell. Lunch through the slot. Dinner through the slot. Sleep. Repeat. For 6 years, Chris kept to himself. Didn't cause trouble. Didn't really talk to anyone. Guards said he was quiet, almost invisible. But in January, something changed. He started writing letters. Lots of letters. To churches. To religious groups. To anyone who would listen. In these letters, he talks about having divine revelations. He says God spoke to him. He says he's a completely different person now. He uses words like reborn and saved and forgiven. The prison chaplain says Chris now shows up to every single religious service, every Bible study, every prayer meeting. He's there, front row, head bowed, hands clasped. Sounds good, right? Sounds like maybe he's actually sorry for what he did. But here's the thing. Prison psychologists looked at these letters. They studied them carefully, and they found something that made them very uncomfortable. There's a pattern in the letters, a pattern they've seen before, in other prisoners who were planning something. What is Chris Watts planning? That's the question that's keeping people up at night. So Chris Watts is now the most religious guy in his cell block. That's what the guards say. He attends every chapel service, never misses one. He's memorized Bible verses. He prays out loud. But what is he actually saying in these letters? We got our hands on some of them. And let me tell you, there's something else. In one letter to a church group in Texas, Chris writes, I'm a new creature in Christ. The old Chris died. The person who did those things. That wasn't the real me. That was a man lost in darkness. But I've found the light. In another letter, he says, God has forgiven me. I've been washed clean. I deserve a second chance to show the world who I really am. Now here's where it gets interesting. Psychologists who study criminals have seen this before. They call it the redemption narrative. It's when someone who did something terrible tries to rewrite their story. They position themselves as the victim. They say they were sick or confused or under someone else's control. And then they say they've changed. It's a manipulation technique. And Chris Watts isn't the first to use it. Other criminals have done the same thing. They find religion in prison. They cry. They apologize. They say all the right words. Why? Because it works. People want to believe in redemption. People want to believe that even the worst person can change. It's human nature. But experts say that for someone like Chris Watts, someone who planned what he did, someone who looked his family in the eyes and made those choices, real change is incredibly rare. One psychologist told us, when we see this pattern, this sudden religious conversion combined with blame shifting and self-victimization, it's almost never genuine. It's strategy. So while Chris is putting on this show of transformation, something else is happening on the outside. Someone is listening to him. Someone believes every word he's saying. And they're starting a campaign. A campaign with one simple goal: get Chris Watts out of prison. You're probably thinking, who would do that? Who would actually try to free this man? The answer is going to surprise you. And honestly, it's going to disturb you. We'll get to that in a minute. But first, you need to understand how Chris is trying to rewrite what actually happened. In the last few months, prison phone recordings have surfaced. Chris has been calling a pen pal, someone who writes to him, someone who believes his story. And in these calls, Chris starts doing something unbelievable. He starts blaming Shannon, his wife, the woman he took from this world. Let me be clear about something before we go further. Shannon Watts was a loving mother, a devoted wife, a friend to many. She did not deserve what happened to her. Nothing Chris says changes that, but Chris doesn't see it that way anymore. At least, that's not the story he's telling now. In these phone calls, he paints a different picture. He says his marriage was difficult. He says he felt trapped. He says he was unhappy for years. He talks about arguments, about feeling controlled, about wanting a different life. He's trying to make people understand why he did what he did. But here's the problem with his story. It's not new. These are the same excuses he used back in 2018 when he was first arrested. The police heard all of this. The prosecutors heard all of this. And you know what? None of it mattered. Because there's no excuse. There's no reason good enough. There's no argument that justifies what he did. The trial showed us the truth. Chris was having an affair. He wanted a new life with someone else. So instead of getting a divorce like a normal person, he made a choice. A horrific choice. But Chris conveniently forgets those details when he tells his new version of events. He forgets that investigators found his internet searches from the weeks before. Searches about relationship breakups, about starting over, about being a single man again. He forgets that his mistress told police he said he was getting separated, that the divorce was almost final, that he was about to be free. He forgets that neighbors saw him loading things into his truck that morning, acting normal, acting calm. He forgets all of that. Or maybe he doesn't forget. Maybe he just hopes you will. And here's the really scary part. Some people are forgetting, or they never knew in the first place. Right now, there are Facebook groups with thousands of members who believe Chris Watts is innocent. There are TikTok videos with millions of views claiming he was framed. There are entire communities online dedicated to finding the truth. How did this happen? How do we get to a place where people are defending someone who confessed? Who led police to where he hid the bodies? Who admitted everything? The answer is complicated, but part of it is Chris himself. He's feeding these theories. He's dropping little hints in his letters, little suggestions, little seeds of doubt, and people are eating it up. Remember Nicole Kessinger? She was Chris's coworker, the woman he was having an affair with, the woman he told he was separated, the woman who, by all accounts, had no idea what Chris was capable of. After everything happened, Nicole disappeared from public view. She changed her name. She moved to a different state. She's trying to live a quiet life away from all of this. And honestly, can you blame her? She got dragged into something unimaginable. But Chris hasn't forgotten about Nicole. Not even close. In recent letters and phone calls, he started saying things about her, suggesting things, implying things. He won't come right out and say it directly. He's too smart for that. But he plants ideas. He'll say things like, "There's more to the story than people know." Or, "I wasn't the only one with secrets." Or maybe someday the full truth will come out. What is he trying to do? He's trying to shift suspicion. He's trying to make people wonder if someone else was involved. He's trying to spread the blame around. But here's what actually happened, according to the FBI investigation. Nicole Kessinger cooperated fully with police. She turned over her phone. She sat for multiple interviews. She took a polygraph test. She had nothing. The investigation cleared her of any involvement. Completely. She was a person caught up in Chris's lies, just like everyone else. So why is Chris bringing her up now? Because he needs a villain. He needs someone else to point at. He needs people to think, well, maybe it wasn't all his fault. It's classic manipulation. Now here's something that's going to shock you. Something that just came out. There's a recorded phone call from 2024 between Chris and his mother. Nobody's heard this call until now. In this call, Chris's mother says something that changes everything we thought we knew about his family's support. She tells him she's scared. Not scared of the media. Not scared of public opinion. She says she's scared of him. Of who he's becoming in prison. His own mother. Think about that for a second. His mother, who stood by him through the trial, who visited him in prison, who wrote him letters, is now admitting she's terrified of her own son. What did Chris say or do to make his mother feel that way? The call got cut off before we could hear his response. But the fear in her voice was real. Prison staff have reported something interesting about Chris Watts. He cries. A lot. During every religious service, guards say they see tears rolling down his face. He's been found in his cell weeping. His letters describe his guilt as unbearable. He talks about how he can't sleep at night because of what he did. On the surface, this seems like genuine remorse. It seems like maybe, just maybe, he's actually sorry. But behavioral analysts who've studied his case aren't buying it. See, there's a difference between real emotion and performed emotion. And experts say Chris is performing. How can they tell? Well, there are a few things. First, the timing. Chris only seems to cry when people are watching. In chapel services. During visits. When guards walk by. But when he thinks no one is looking. Different story. A correctional officer who worked his block for 2 years told us something interesting. When Chris is alone, when there are no cameras, no audience, he's calm. Almost eerily calm. He reads. He works out. He writes his letters. No tears. No emotion. The tears only come out when they serve a purpose. Second, there's his body language. Forensic psychologists have studied video footage of Chris from prison visits and court appearances. They point out that his crying doesn't match the normal patterns of genuine grief. When someone is truly devastated, their whole body shows it. Their shoulders shake. Their breathing becomes irregular. They struggle to speak. Chris's crying is different. It's controlled. He can turn it on and off. He can talk through it clearly. His body stays relatively still. One psychologist said, it's like watching an actor who studied crying but never actually felt it. Third, there's the content of what he says when he's crying. Real remorse focuses on the victims, on the pain caused, on wishing you could undo what you did. Chris's version of remorse focuses on himself, on how hard prison is, on how much he's suffering, on how he wants people to understand him. It's self-centered. Even his apologies are about him. We spoke with a former FBI profiler who actually interviewed Chris Watts during the investigation. She remembers something specific about him. She said, I've interviewed hundreds of criminals. Some are remorseful, some aren't. But Chris was different. He showed what we call appropriate effect. He said the right words, made the right facial expressions, but there was nothing behind it. It was like talking to an empty shell. He was mimicking human emotion, not feeling it. She told us that even back in 2018, Chris was performing. And 7 years later, he's still doing it. Maybe he's just gotten better at the performance. In 2025, Chris Watts has been busy writing apology letters. Dozens of them. He's written to Shanann's family, to his own family, to the community of Frederick, Colorado, to his former coworkers, to church groups, even to God. These letters are detailed. They're emotional. They use all the right words. I'm sorry. I was wrong. I don't deserve forgiveness. I've destroyed so many lives. But here's where it gets interesting. Linguistic experts and handwriting analysts have studied these letters, and they've found patterns that are extremely revealing. First, let's talk about what Chris apologizes for. He apologizes for what happened. He apologizes for that day. He apologizes for the tragedy. He apologizes for causing pain. Notice something. He uses passive language. Things happened. There was a tragedy. He caused pain. He never says, I took Shanann's life. He never says, I hurt my daughters. He never uses direct, active language that puts the responsibility squarely on himself. It's subtle. Most people wouldn't notice. But to experts, it's a huge red flag. Second, let's talk about what he doesn't apologize for. He doesn't apologize for lying. He doesn't apologize for the affair. He doesn't apologize for planning. He doesn't apologize for deceiving everyone who loved him. He only apologizes for the end result, not for the choices that led there. Third, let's talk about timing. Chris's letters started ramping up in late 2024, right around the time parole reform laws were being discussed in Colorado. Laws that could potentially affect sentences for certain crimes. Now, Chris's sentence wouldn't be affected by these reforms. He's serving life without parole. No law changes that, but experts say the timing isn't coincidental. Chris is trying to build a public image of redemption. He's trying to appear rehabilitated. Just in case there's ever any loophole, any technicality, any chance. Now here's the big revelation. There was one letter that Chris wrote that was never meant to be seen by the public. It was intercepted by prison officials. Standard procedure. They read all inmate mail. And in this letter, Chris drops the act completely. The letter was addressed to a supporter, someone who'd been writing to him, someone who believed he deserved freedom. And in it, Chris wrote 8 words that prosecutors say reveal his true character. 8 words that prove he hasn't changed at all. Those 8 words, I just need to wait this out. Wait this out. Like he's waiting for people to forget. Waiting for the outrage to die down. Waiting for his chance. Not, I deserve to be here. Not, I'm paying for what I did. Not, this is where I belong. Just waiting. When prosecutors saw this letter, they immediately filed it with the court. They wanted it on record. They wanted proof that Chris's transformation is fake. Because here's what those 8 words really mean. Chris Watts still thinks he can beat this. He still thinks there's a way out. He's playing the long game. And that should terrify all of us. While you've been going about your normal life, something has been growing online. A movement. And it's bigger than you think. They call themselves truth seekers. They have Facebook groups, YouTube channels, TikTok accounts, podcasts, websites, even fundraising campaigns. And their mission, free Chris Watts. I know what you're thinking. Who would actually support this man? Who would actually think he deserves freedom? The answer is more people than you'd expect. These aren't just random trolls or conspiracy theorists. Some of these people are educated. They have families. They have normal lives. But they've convinced themselves that Chris Watts is innocent, or at the very least, that he's been punished enough. How did they get here? It starts with doubt. Someone posts a video asking questions. Why was he convicted so quickly? What about the affair partner? What if there's more to the story? These questions seem reasonable at first. We should always question things, right? But then it spirals. The questions become theories. The theories become evidence. The evidence becomes absolute certainty. Pretty soon, you have thousands of people who believe Chris was framed, or coerced, or that he's protecting someone else, or that he's a victim of a corrupt system. Some of these supporters write to Chris regularly. They send him money for his commissary account. They create websites proclaiming his innocence. They attack anyone who disagrees with him online. And Chris? He writes back to them. He encourages them. He feeds them little bits of information, little hints that there's more to discover. He's playing them. There's actually a psychological term for some of what's happening here. It's called hybristophilia. It's when someone is attracted to people who've committed crimes, especially serious crimes. Psychologists say it's more common than most people realize. There's something about the danger, the notoriety, the forbidden nature of it that draws certain people in. Some of Chris's supporters have been very open about their feelings. They talk about how handsome he is, how misunderstood he is, how they wish they could save him. It's disturbing, but it's real. Now, social media algorithms make all of this worse. When you watch one video about Chris Watts, the algorithm shows you 10 more. When you join one Facebook group, it suggests 5 others. Before you know it, you're in an echo chamber where everyone agrees with you, where everyone thinks Chris deserves freedom. The real danger here isn't just that people believe false things. The danger is that false information spreads fast, faster than truth, and it can have real-world consequences. But here's what these supporters don't know. Prison officials have been watching Chris's communications. They've been monitoring who he talks to and what he says. And they found evidence that Chris is running what basically amounts to a manipulation campaign from behind bars. He tells different people different stories. He drops different hints to different groups. He's testing to see which narratives get the most support, which lies spread the fastest. He's treating this like a marketing campaign. And his product? Himself. One prison official told us, "We've never seen anything quite like this. Most inmates just do their time. But Chris is actively trying to shape public opinion. He's building a movement. And it's working. That should scare you. Because if Chris can do this from a maximum security cell with limited access to the outside world, imagine what he could do if he ever got out." Let's talk about what Chris Watts actually wants. He wants out. That's the bottom line. Maybe not today. Maybe not tomorrow. But eventually, he wants to walk free. So what are his options? Legally speaking, what can he actually do? The short answer, almost nothing. Chris pled guilty. He took a plea deal to avoid the death penalty. In exchange, he got life in prison without the possibility of parole. 5 life sentences to be exact. 1 for each victim, plus the unborn child. When you take a plea deal, you give up most of your appeal rights. You're basically saying, yes, I did this. I'm guilty. I accept the punishment. So Chris can't just appeal his conviction like someone who was found guilty by a jury. He already admitted everything. But that doesn't mean he's given up. His strategy now seems to be about public opinion. If he can convince enough people that he's changed, that he's been rehabilitated, that he deserves mercy, maybe pressure builds. Maybe someone in power listens. Maybe laws change. It's a long shot. Legal experts we talked to said his chances are essentially 0. But Chris is betting on time. He's betting that people forget, that the anger fades, that compassion grows. He's also been requesting transfers to lower security prisons 14 times since 2020. Every single request has been denied. Why? Because Colorado takes his case very seriously. They know he's high profile. They know other inmates would target him. They know the victims' families deserve peace. And they know Chris Watts represents one of the worst crimes in the state's history. We contacted the Colorado District Attorney's Office to ask about Chris's current status and any possibility of him ever being released. Their response was brief. Mr. Watts is serving life without parole. There are no circumstances under which he will be released from custody. That's pretty definitive. But here's the thing that keeps prosecutors up at night. There is one scenario technically where Chris could walk free. It's incredibly unlikely. It would require multiple things to happen that probably never will. But it's technically possible. If there were ever a successful challenge to Colorado's sentencing laws, if the Supreme Court ruled a certain way on a certain type of case, if new evidence somehow emerged that changed everything, if a future governor decided to grant clemency, again, none of this is likely, but it's not impossible. And Chris knows this. He's patient. He's waiting. He's building his narrative. Just in case, let's talk about what Chris Watts' actual life looks like right now, today, in 2025, because I think it's important to understand the reality versus what he wants people to believe. Chris wakes up at 5:30 a.m. every morning. He doesn't get to choose when he wakes up. The lights come on. That's it. Time to get up. Breakfast comes through a slot in his cell door at 6 a.m. Usually it's something like oatmeal or cereal. Cold, bland, but it's food. From 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. he eats. He might read. He might do push-ups in his cell. There's not much else to do. At 7 a.m., if it's his day for recreation, a guard escorts him to a small outdoor cage. It's about the size of a large closet. Chain-link fence on all sides, open to the sky. He gets 1 hour here, alone. No other inmates around. Some days he uses this time to walk in circles. Some days he does exercises. Some days he just sits. At 8 a.m., he's back in his cell. For the rest of the day, he's locked down. The only breaks are for meals, which come through the slot. Lunch at noon. Dinner at 5 p.m. He can read books. He can write letters. He can listen to a small radio if he has commissary money. That's about it. He showers 3 times a week. The shower is in a separate cell. He's handcuffed, escorted there, uncuffed, showers under supervision, then cuffed again and taken back to his cell. He has no privacy. Guards check on him every 30 minutes. Cameras watch him constantly. He has no friends in prison. He can't. Other inmates know who he is, what he did. Child killers are at the bottom of the prison hierarchy. They're targets. That's why he's in protective custody, for his own safety. Twice a month, he's allowed phone calls. Each call is monitored. Each call is recorded. Each call has a time limit. Once a month, he can have a visitor. They sit separated by glass. They talk on phones. No touching. No hugging. Just talking. This is his life. Every single day. For the rest of his life. Now, a correctional officer who worked Chris's block agreed to talk to us. They requested we not use their name. They told us something interesting about Chris's behavior when cameras aren't watching. They said, he's different than other inmates. Most guys in protective custody are scared. They're nervous. They're constantly looking over their shoulders. But Chris? He's calm. Too calm. It's like he's not even bothered by where he is. The officer continued, I've seen him smile to himself. I've seen him seem almost content. Like he's exactly where he wants to be. And that's what bothers me. Normal people in his situation would be miserable. But he seems okay with it.